Okay, so we talked before about getting general color onto areas. Now what we want to talk about is putting specific textures onto a model. To do that, we have to talk about UVs. UVs are a coordinate system that essentially take a 3D object and lay it out flat. So the best way you can think about this, excuse me, should pull my prop out earlier. You got a box, right? You got this lovely box of strawberry bars that come from Trader Joe's. And when you see it on the shelf, it's like this, right? It's got all this information printed all over it. And you need this on it so that you can tell whether it's, you know, a box of strawberry bars or cat treats. You know, you don't want to buy a box of cat treats and go home. So, can't wait to, oh, yuck. They might be good. You never know. I've always wondered, you know, when they tell you, you know, it's beef-flavored dog food. How did they know? How did they know? Like, Steve, come taste this. What's it? It tastes a little like beef. All right, that's beef flavor. But all this stuff has to get on this box, right? You can't put it on this way. So the way that it happens is it starts out flat, like this. Runs through a printer. They print all the information on it as a flat object, and then they fold it into the shape that it's going to be. So what UVs are is essentially taking your object and folding it out, placing all of the surfaces within the UV space. It's just a flat two-dimensional representation of all of the polygons that are part of your object. Every polygon has what's called a UV shell. There's a one-to-one relationship. You have to have a UV for every polygon. They're all there. If the coordinate system is the U coordinates are the horizontal coordinates, the V coordinates are the vertical coordinates. V being vertical is just coincidental. It's because X, Y, and Z are used over here, so they backed up a little bit. Anyway, UV. You might think, well, where's W, Paul? That letter's missing. There are W coordinates that are actually for procedural surfaces. So surfaces that are mathematically, that's my butt. Somebody texted me. Apparently somebody who doesn't know that I'm working right now decided that I needed to get a message. Yeah, W coordinates are for procedurals that are mathematically generated. So the UV space is a equal-sided square. It's a square. The coordinates start at 0, 0 in the bottom left, and they go to 1, 1 at the upper right. Every UV that is contained in your object has to be within this space in order for a texture to go onto it. Okay? Let me show you what that looks like. So we'll open up a scene here. Shirt. Okay, all kinds of pop-up messages. So here's this shirt. This is just a model of a shirt, a T-shirt. And if we take a look here, go over here. Let's go put that over there in the perspective window. And then we're going to take a look at our UV panel, UV editor. This is what our UV editor looks like. So every one of these polygons that's in this shirt is represented by one of these UV shells laid out here. This is how we need to lay out our UVs so that we can put specific textures in specific areas of the surface. In this case, this is actually half of the UVs. The other half is directly below. This happens a lot in games where sometimes UVs are doubled up. Like if you were doing a texture, say for the palm of the hands on a character, you put all the UVs for both hands in the same space, and then you only have to paint one texture map, and it gets applied to both hands. Generally, though, you want to have UVs in a unique space so that you can apply a particular texture to that particular polygon, and it'll go only on that polygon. So this would be fine if we were doing like a striped shirt or a patterned shirt. If we had anything that was text-based on this, that name patch we were talking about earlier, we couldn't do it with the UVs laid out this way because it would end up on both sides of the shirt, and on one side it would be reversed. Instead of saying Steve on one side, it would say as whatever Steve backwards is on the other side. So this is a relatively nice layout. They're not. The idea behind laying out your UVs is you want to keep them as undistorted as possible, so that the texture is as smooth as possible. So this is a pretty good one. They don't start out like this, though. Save. Go ahead and open this guy up. It'll take him a second. It's looking for files that aren't there. Yeah, see, it's looking for projections that don't exist. So this is a character. This is actually the character from my master's thesis. Oh dear, we might have killed Maya. What's that? It was not, actually. I think we might have killed Maya. Damn it. Oh, good, it's back. All right, cool. It was just taking forever to do its thing. No, my thesis actually was about it was about the the pulling a rabbit out of a hat magic trick. It was about that from the rabbit's perspective. So, but I did it so that you didn't know that's what it was until the very end. It was mostly about this rabbit's in a big cylindrical containment area. And then he gets chased around by this giant hand and does everything he can to avoid it, and then at the end, he's on stage. But here's my guy, and let's take a quick look at what his UVs look like. Oops, panel, UV editor, select him. So there are the UVs for my rabbit right now. You fix it. This is so what happens is as you create polygons, as you extrude and put in edge loops and all that kind of thing, these are created and Maya does its best guess at putting them on there. It just kind of goes, this might go here and that might could be over here, and it kind of piles them up on top of themselves. This is unusable the way it is. There's absolutely nothing we can do with it for a number of reasons. One is it's not what we call human readable. Like I can't tell what any piece of this is. This might be his toe right here, but I'm not positive. Some of these UVs take up the entire UV space, right? Any place that these things overlap, we got 2 or more UVs in a particular space. Any texture that I put in that area, let's say this area right here, where this oval is. Anything I put in this area is going to be, it's going to show up on every UV that's in this space. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, all of those are going to have whatever texture I put there. It's not going to work. You know, I'm probably going to want like a little white patch on his chest and a little pink nose and, you know, pink on the inside of the ears and maybe, you know, like a, you know, pads on his hands or whatever. So I would have to take this and lay it out so that it's the UVs are distributed within this space in unique positions so that I can then apply a texture to it. And we're not going to go that deep into it in class tonight. There is a tutorial on the website from a few releases ago, but it's still very relevant, that will walk you through the process of taking a character and breaking it down and placing the UVs in the UV space so that you can then create a texture map. What we're going to do instead is just kind of get a good sense of how this, how this all works. So the first thing I'm going to do, which I should have done already, but I didn't for some reason. Oh, maybe I did. Desktop, UV maps. No, I did not. All right. So we're going to go over here. And in this week's module, down here, this is the texture file. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And it looks something like this. In fact, it looks exactly like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an object, we're going to lay out the UVs, and then we're going to apply this texture to it. Now the thing that's important to note as this is starting up, the process that we're about to go through with this, that I'm about to demonstrate, is exactly the opposite of what you would do. Normally what you would do is you take your object, your 3D object, you would take it, you would lay out your UVs in the UV space, and you would export that layout, bring it into Photoshop, and create the texture once the UVs are laid out, and then bring that texture back into Maya and apply it to the object. In no instance do you create your texture in advance and then apply it, or lay out the UVs so that it matches. We're just doing this because this is the tutorial that Maya provides. It gives you a really good idea of how this all works, but nope. And how about we get rid of the crop, because we don't need that. It gives you a real good idea of how UVs work, but it is the reverse of the process. So if you decide that you want to do some UVing on your character to create textures or patterns or what have you, just be aware that you're going to lay your UVs out first, then take them out, export them, and I'll show you how to do that. Bring them into Photoshop, create your texture, and then the texture will come back. You'll load it back into Maya and apply it to that surface, and the textures will show up on your object. It's wonderful. So this is what our texture looks like. It's just basically it's a box that I just showed you. The front, top, bottom, and sides are one part of the texture, and then the back is another part of the texture. So that being said, we'll go ahead and come back over into Maya. and we'll lay this baby out. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a polygon cube, and I'm going to go to the option box, and I want a width of 8 units, and I'm going to have a height of 10 units and a depth of 3. So these are just the values that are in the tutorial. They could be anything. They happen to match what the texture's doing. Width, height, and depth divisions are 1 each, and I'm doing this to simplify the model so that we've only got a few UVs to work with. And we're going to create it. There it is right there. There's our box. And then on the translate Y, I'm going to change it to 5 just to bring this up onto the grid so it's not being cut in half. And then I'm going to modify and freeze transformations, and that takes the translate back to 0. So now it just sits there. It's at 0, 0, 0 as far as Maya is concerned. If we take a look at our okay, go over here. We're going to take a look at our UVs right now. So we'll open this up as the UV editor. And there's our object. Here's our UVs. So these aren't particularly useful to us, right? So why would these not be useful to us? What's that? They don't, what don't they match? Right. So the proportion of these UVs don't match the proportions of the box, right? So if we were to try and create a texture on each of these UVs to put on the surface of this box, we'd have to distort the image for that, right? Because this is, let's say this one here is the front of the box. I don't know if it is or not, but let's just say it is. Right here. It would have to be, the image that's going on here would have to be created much shorter and perhaps even narrower than the surface of the box. If these are the side flaps right here, we'd have to stretch the image horizontally so that when it was applied here, it ended up looking correct. See what I mean? Does that make sense? They're not the proportions are not the same. It's kind of like my rabbit. I love my rabbit there, where it's just UVs everywhere. Can't tell what anything is. That's the other problem with this, is we don't know which of these UVs represents which side of the box. So what we want to do is we want to change these up so that they match what's going on the box, so that we can tell where each one belongs and get the proportions correct. So here in the modeling menu set, right, we want to be in the modeling menu set. Under UV, we've got a number of different projection types. Okay, so cylindrical takes a look at the model from a cylindrical point of view, and we'll grab the UVs as it goes around and lay them out nice and flat. Planar, we'll look at it from one angle, X, Y, or Z, and project the UVs that way. Spherical, we'd look at it as a sphere, et cetera, et cetera. The one we're after is automatic. What automatic does is it takes a look at the object from some number of sides. We'll decide the number of sides in just a minute. But it'll take a look at it from some number of sides, decide which of those sides each UV is best projected from, and then project that UV from that side. So how do we determine which number of sides? We're going to go to the option box, click on that, and these are our projection planes. Right now, it wants to project from 6 different planes. We have options. We can project from 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or 12 particular planes. We have a box here What's the least number of planes we can project from and determine what our UVs look like? 6? You sure? 4. Are you just guessing numbers at this point? Okay. 2. Okay. Still waiting. 5. Is 5 an option? You're like, he's hovering on 5. Maybe that's the answer. Yeah, 3 is actually the correct answer. Why 3? Well, if it's looking at it from 3 angles, what are the 3 angles it's going to look at it from? X, Y, and Z, right? So if it looks at it from the x-axis as one of the angles, it'll pick up the 2 sides, right? It'll look at those 2 sides and go, yep, those are it. If it looks at it from the y-axis, it's going to pick up the top and the bottom and project those. Look at it from the z-axis, it's going to catch the front and the back. Make sense? You could do 6, but, you know, it's a little bit of overkill. 3 will work just fine. Not 5. These are the extra ones, 5, 8, and 12. Put sort of combinations of X, Y, Z, ZY, XZ. You know, so it sort of is 45-degree angles around so that you can get more. It's not for something that's cubic. It's for things that are more spherical or irregularly shaped. But 3 will work just fine. We do want fewer pieces, and we're going to hit project. And if you watch over here on the UV side, when I hit project, these are our projection planes. You can see there's one on the X, one on the Y, one on the Z. I click off. I'm going to come over here real quick and put on our half shade. Doesn't that look better? So there's a front and back. We don't know which one is which. Doesn't really matter right now. There's the top and the bottom, right above, on the left, and on the right, we've got the 2 sides. How do we know that that's the top and the bottom and those are the 2 sides? Look at the object, right? The top and the bottom are shorter, right? The box is taller than it is wide. The ones that are taller have to be the side UVs, right? Okay. So these are UV shells. And you see if I roll over them, it shows me exactly which one is which. So this UV shell right here is the one on the front. This one's the one on the back. Now this is a little bit tricky. Sometimes this trips people up. Each of these edges that you see, these are each individual UV shells. There is an edge on all 4 of these edges around this particular shell are shared by the top, the 2 sides, and the bottom on some edge, right? Even though they look like separate pieces, that is one edge. They're represented as separated because we've broken this apart. We're going to put it back together in just a second. But there is an edge on the top that matches this edge, right? There's an edge on the bottom that matches one of these edges. There's an edge on the side that matches these, and so on. So now that we've got these sized the way we want them, what we want to do is we want to put these back together as much as we possibly can. We're going to take a look again at our, where'd you go? At our texture map. Here's our texture map, right? And according to our texture map, we've got the front, the top, the bottom, and the 2 sides connected. And the back is kind of by itself and turned a little bit. So we want to set up our UVs so that that's the way that they're working. So to reconnect these, we could just grab them and move them around, but there's an easier way to go. I'm going to on this, I'm going to right click and I'm going to select edge. And this again, this menu is called marking menu. It is also a marking menu. Even though it's a different marking menu, it's still a marking menu. What's that? No, the spacebar menu is this one. But yeah, even though the contents are different, this is still a marking menu. I'm going to select edge because I want to grab edges here and see if I roll over this edge. See how it highlights those two? So this edge here and this edge on this object are the same edge. They're not two separate edges. They're the exact same edge. So I'm going to select this edge, and I click on it, and I'm going to come up to polygons, and I'm going to select move and sew UV edges. And when I click on this, if you watch, this piece right here is going to jump over to the larger piece. See how it moved out of here and went over to here? These are now reconnected. This is a UV shell. Now this is a larger UV shell. Okay. And then I'm going to select this edge here. Okay, we'll go another way. And here, edge. Thank you. And this edge here is that edge. If I want to repeat the last thing that I did, G. Why did you not move? Oh. Yeah, just G. Click on that. Polygon. Move and sew UV edges. It goes there. Huh. Misbehaving a little bit, so we'll just go through and do the whole thing. Move and sew the bottom, so move that one. And then we'll get this one finally. Actually, I'm going to come up here and grab this edge. There's that one. Polygon, move and sew. So there we are. Now we've sewn all of these together, and all 5 of these are one larger shell that we can select like this. And with our move tool selected, this is the same move tool you use in the 3D space, except it only has 2 axes, because remember, this is a 2D representation of the 3D object, right? It's taking the 3D object and laying it out flat. So we've only got X and Y move. We take this and we'll put it up here. And then we can take this guy right here, and we want to roll him over, right? Because if we look at our texture map, oops, there we go, there we are. So this is rotated 90 degrees. So we want to flip that UV over. We could take this and just turn on our rotate tool and roll it over, but we're never going to nail that 90 degrees perfectly. So that's where this tool comes in right here at the top of our UV editor window. We've got these 2 rotation tools, counterclockwise and clockwise, and this rotates 45 degrees with every click. So if you watch this UV here and I click one time, it rotates 45 degrees. If I click it again, I rotate it again. Now it's 90 degrees, and I can take this and I can move it over. Now these are overlapping a little bit, right? And which means that they're not sized correctly for they're not sized correctly for our texture because they're spaced. Again, this is something you wouldn't have to do if you were laying out your UVs first. But because this is the exercise, we'll end up having to do this. So now what we want to do is we're going to come over here, we're going to go to object mode, select this as an object, and we want to apply our texture to it. So if we want to apply a surface to this, a texture to it, what's the first thing we have to do? We talked about at the beginning of the class. I know, you pick it up in the video, it's okay. We have to change the surface, right? Because this is Lambert 1. We don't want to change Lambert 1. We want to leave it the way it is. So I'm going to right click, assign new material. I'm going to get a Lambert. Lambert. And then again, in the attribute editor, I'm going to go all the way over to the side, get Lambert 2. I'm going to call this box surface. There we go. Color doesn't matter because we're about to put a texture on. So this is where you apply a texture, this little checkerboard right here. Click on this, and I tell it that I want to use a PSD file. This is a Photoshop file. There's reasons to use all of these, and they all come in handy in their own way. In this case, I'm going to use a PSD file. That tells that tells it to look for a Photoshop file. It opens this window for me, and under image name, I've got this little folder right here. Click on this folder. My image happens to be on the desktop. Normally, in your project directory, your image would be, you put your Photoshop file or your image file, whatever you're going to texture map with, this would go in your source images subdirectory, because that's where Maya is going to look for it initially. We'll look for it in source images. But because I'm trying to expedite things here a little bit, mine's on the desktop, so that's where I'm going to select it from. I'm going to hit open. There's my texture. It is now applied to my object. It's actually the tricorder from the original Star Trek. So there it is. If I go to View, Shading, and turn on Hardware Texturing, there it is. So you can see it's on there. Everything's lined up pretty well. Or it's on. They're on their proper sides, but things aren't quite right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Channel Box so I can do this in a two-window view. I'm going to take this guy right here, Shell, and I'm going to take him. I'm going to move him a little bit and see how the surface slides on the box. Move this around a little bit. I'm going to scale it. I'm going to scale from the center so it's scaled, because I know these proportions are correct, right? We relayed this out. We know the proportions are correct, so I just need to scale it down so that it fits that texture. And to do that, I want to scale it in both directions at the same time. So I'm going to grab the center of the scale tool and scale inward until things match. And I might need to move it around a little bit more too. About like that. That looks pretty good. See, so there's the, because I connected these up, the front, the sides, top, and bottom are all textured. And now all we have to do is fix this one down here. We'll, again, select the shell, move this so it's roughly in place, get my scale tool, again, scale from the center. If you want to move just on one axis, you just grab the handle. There we go. Looks pretty good. And there we are. I now have a textured box of Quackers with 101% of your daily value of irony. It says so right there. So the surface of the Lambert 2, or in this case the box surface, doesn't matter. The color doesn't matter because the texture is lying on top of it, right? So we can just leave it that gray. We don't have to do anything with the gray. We just put the texture on top. Does that make sense, gang? So what I just walked you through is what you're doing this week. You're going to create this box. You're going to take the texture map that's on the web page and apply it to this box. I'll upload the video in a few minutes. There's also on the website bless you. There's a link to UV mapping. So the assignment, here's the assignment right here. So you're gonna do the box UV texturing tutorial using the PSD texture provided. If you want to change up the texture, you certainly can. I think in last semester this assignment happened around Halloween, so somebody did change the box. They were like ghost crackers or something. So that was pretty cool. It's always fun to see. So this is due next week. If you don't make changes to the PSD file, you don't need to turn it in. If you do, please do, because I want to see what cool stuff you did with the PSD file. If you just use the texture as it is and you lay out the UVs, then just turn in your .ma file, your Maya file, okay? Because I open those up and I make sure that the UV window looks good, and then you get credit for it. Yes, sir.
Oh, you need to put Lambert down like a time or something so that you go in there?
No, great question. The only reason I changed the surface is, remember at the beginning of the class I said you always want to leave Lambert 1 alone, because that's the default surface that Maya assigns. So if we put a texture on Lambert 1, anything that Maya creates will now have that cracker texture on it. Every time, like let's say you're working on your scene and you've got you're a 70s fan and you got a picture of Farrah Fawcett on a poster that you made, right? You remember that Farrah Fawcett thing, right? Then you go, and now I'll make a couch. And you create the couch, and it's got like Farrah Fawcett all over it, because that texture is now part of Lambert 1. So the reason you change the surface, the surface material, is so that when new stuff is created, it's still created in that middle gray, and there's no additional texture, there's no change of color, there's none of that. Make sense? Yeah. Like I said, we talked about the not changing Lambert 1 at the very beginning, so watch the first video from tonight, and you'll hear it again. Yeah, it's one of those things where, it'll eventually make sense, but for now, just remember that anytime you're going to change a surface, it can't be Lambert 1. It has to be something other than that. It can be a Phong, it can be a Blinn, it can be another Lambert. It just can't be Lambert 1. Okay, Linda Carter's fine too. She's holding up well too. You seen her lately? She's still a very attractive woman. No, you were not the only guy watching Wonder Woman. I will assure you. And I cannot wait for the Wonder Woman movie. That looks like it's going to be, oh yeah. End of the year, it's going to be badass. It's going to be really awesome. Yeah. She was the best thing in Batman vs. Superman. Without question. She was only at the end. Like you sat through 2 hours and go, yep, that was great. All right. So, let's finish looking at this real quick. We'll discuss it after I turn the video off. How's that sound? So anyway, at a minimum, you're turning in your Maya file with the cracker box in it, with your UVs laid out. Okay. If you change up the PSD file, please upload that as well, because I want to see what you did. And your other assignment is start surfacing your model and your props. You know, if you decide you just want to put large areas of color on things, then that's the first demo that I did. Excuse me, create a new surface, assign a color to it, stick it on your object. If you want to do UV texturing, then you'll need to do some UV layout like you saw. There's also on the website, there are 2 other print tutorials about laying out UVs. And this first one, both of these are from earlier versions of Maya, but they're still pretty relevant. There might be some different menu calls. You know, things get moved around and changed every so often. But this is one from, I don't remember what version, but this basically shows you how to, so these are the UVs for that character that you just saw. This guy right here, those are his UVs. Completely unusable. And they show you how to do a projection and how to grab portions of him and project and then lay the pieces out within the UV space. I don't think I mentioned, all of your pieces have to be between the 0, 0 and the 1, 1 in the UV space in order for the texture to apply. By the way, you can mix textures and solid colors too. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other. Any polygon can have any surface on it. So there's that one, and then here's another. This is the tutorial file. So if you want to do a dry run and practice the layout that's described in this tutorial, this is the character file that you can use. And if you wanted to use this guy as your character, you could do that too. You know, as far as that goes. But this is the actual character file that's referenced in this tutorial. So you could mess with him as well. Okay? Any questions? Oh, sure. This is one of those things that it's the whole, you know, making a 3D object 2D and whatnot. That can be a little bit confusing. Just go through the tutorial, lay stuff out, you know, kind of work it. It usually ends up fine. You know, I don't usually, it may not make sense or it may not, you know, resonate when we're talking about it. But as you go through it and you kind of step through the process, I've never really had a whole bunch of people come up and go, I really don't understand how to do this. I've had people do it badly, but they do it. You know, it gets done poorly, but it gets done. This is a huge part of really any 3D project. You know, anytime you see, you know, wrinkles and folds in a game character, or you know, the texture on Carl Fredricksen's jacket, or the eye that's on the front of Mr. Incredible there, all of that is texture mapping, and all of those had UVs that had to be laid out. So this is just part of the process. The G on the Minions overalls, you know, the texture on the overalls, the texture on the skin of the face, all of that stuff, all textures with UVs. All right, I'm going to press stop now, and then we can talk about Batman and Superman.